Hey there, friends. I want to start today with a kind of a strange thought, but it occurred to me, and actually, I've been thinking a lot about this, and maybe you have too, but maybe you haven't. So I'm going to share. You know, for the first time in human history, and mind you, we've been around for a minute, but for the first time in human history, human beings are living inside a global nervous system. Not metaphorically, but literally. And if you think about it, and just indulge me while I go on this little bit of a tangent here, but I think all of our eyes will sort of pop out a bit. If you think about it, and especially majority of listeners here with us, with my beautiful colleague Yoshi Barnett and myself here at the Raw Onion. And by the way, welcome to the Raw Onion. I kind of skipped over the intro, the formal intro. So hello and welcome. We're very, very happy you're here. But for most of us, we're at an age, right? Let's say around 40 and up. And if it hadn't occurred to you, we're a special breed of humans. And I say this because if you think about it, and here we go, we are the absolute last people that will ever walk this earth. From the day humanity has stepped foot on this earth, we are the last bastion of people who will ever have known life without immense technology interwoven in our daily lives. We are the last of absolute humanity that will know what a childhood is like without a screen in our face. And most of us then can say for at least 15 or 20 years of life, really to live without computers in our face. Maybe around a little bit in high school, we had Oregon Trail, right? Or just starting to kind of get online, but nothing. I mean, that would be 0.5% of what it is today. To be able to run around and not be completely accessible all the time. No other generation will ever have those years that we had. Think about that for a moment. And that is such an incredible privilege. And I think as storytellers of humanity, we all need to hold on to those memories because we will be the last people. We are responsible for making sure that those days are documented. I know there's a huge nostalgia for the 90s right now, and I can't say that I'm not one of those people who've been thinking a lot about how simple those times were. And there's a sweetness that comes with that, isn't there? It's a bittersweetness because we had moments, and even I was talking to a friend the other day that, even if you were a bit older and you had a job in the 90s. I was in junior high and high school in the 90s. But let's say you could go through the day and then you went home and you didn't have 100 people trying to contact you. Or if you were working, you could actually take the night and go and have dinner or go enjoy time with your friends or your family. You weren't always reachable. Think about what that did to your nervous system to regulate it by default. You had downtime that was naturally built into humanity. It doesn't exist anymore. So literally, we are inside a global nervous system today. And for those of you listening that are 40 plus, take that with a privilege and also with a responsibility that maybe we need to pay extra close attention because it wasn't something we were born with. That we need to take a little extra self-care more than most people that are younger than us. That we remember that we were actually raised a little bit differently, not a little, a lot differently. And so literally today, as we talk, think about the extra care that you might need to take, the extra steps, the extra guardianship of your sovereignty, of your psychological sovereignty, that maybe the younger folks don't need because they don't know any different. No shade to them. They have a skill set that we do not have. We never will. And that needs to be respected. But today, we are talking about psychological sovereignty in an age where we are all inside a global nervous system, very literally. Billions of human minds are now connected through a constant stream of information and emotion. At any moment, we can feel the emotion temperature of the entire planet. And no, this is not a repetition of last week or the week before's episode. We're going deeper, so just bear with me, guys. We fear for one country, we outrage from another country. Celebration happens somewhere else. Conflict everywhere, confusion, right? We're like ping pong balls. And the strange thing is, your nervous system reacts to all of it. So even when none of it is not happening in the room you're sitting in, it's still happening and you're still aware of it. And so today's episode isn't really about social media per se, it's something deeper. It's about our psychological sovereignty. And before we go any further, let's define what that actually means. Psychological sovereignty is the ability to maintain authority over your own mind, emotions, and attention in environments designed to influence them. So in simpler terms, we can break it down as the ability to decide what gets access to your nervous system, what deserves your attention, what deserves your emotional energy, and what does not. And again, let's put a pin in it really quick. This is not about being apathetic to the world. It's about psychological sovereignty. We cannot be on, and we cannot be on screen and online and on emotionally and on cognitively for every other person on earth. We have to be sovereign about how we operate psychologically, because whether we realize it or not, we are living through a massive psychological experiment, guys. This is the tipping point of pushing humanity to our limits. How far can we go until we actually have to say, wait a minute, let me put the brakes on my own car here? Humanity is standing at a kind of collective crossroads. Now, Yoshie can speak to crossroads. She is an expert crossroads coach, ironically enough. And yes, it is a shameless plug because she's brilliant at what she does. But this version of crossroads is humanity standing at what? Well, listen, every generation inherits a different environment, right? Your grandparents inherited a physical world. They navigated geography, work, family, community. But us, we're navigating something very different. We're navigating an information environment. Information environments shape consciousness. Getting a little matrixy on ya, but it's the truth. For most of human society, the amount of information your brain had to process was pretty small. And yeah, we touched on that a little in previous episodes, but let's revisit it because it's important. We knew what was happening in our household 100 years ago. But today, our brain wakes up and we immediately begin processing emotional signals of millions of people. People you've never met, people who you never will meet. I'm not saying they're not important, of course they are. But what is their plight doing to you? Yes, we need to learn. Yes, we need to be outraged. We need to feel. You know why? We're human. We're human. But we have to differentiate, right? And I used that word last week too. Emotional differentiation. We are in the world of information now. So all we need to do, and again, we're not apathetic, but we need to be able to say, wait a minute, let me inform myself, but also let me know when to walk away so I don't crash and burn. Our brains did not evolve for truth. Our brains evolved for survival inside a tribe. An 8 billion person tribe is a mighty big tribe. And that brings me to this notion of our ancestral nervous system. So let me explain something to you. Inside your head right now is a nervous system that's shaped by hundreds of thousands of years of human survival. It's ancient and it's incredibly efficient. But it was designed for a completely different environment. Why? Because anthropologists estimate that for the most of human history, people have lived in a social group of roughly, let's say, between 40 and 150 people. So around 150 people is where you're going to tap out, and that's how we were designed. And most of those people did not go beyond 100 miles of where they were born, let alone visiting a different place on the opposite side of the world. That was your world. Those were the people whose opinions mattered. Those were the people whose emotions affected your nervous system. And today, we are overloaded. And yes, that should make us absolutely outraged. But what are we talking about? Hearing it, living with it in empathy, but also knowing when and what we need or can do about it. We have to be realistic, which means your nervous system is constantly trying to answer two ancient questions. A, is this dangerous? And B, where do I belong? That's it. And when you're hearing stuff from every which way, neither of those questions is ever going to get answered. And there's another layer here that we don't talk about. Your nervous system is not shaped by your own experiences. It is shaped by generations before you. Your grandparents, your great-grandparents, they lived through environments that were often really dangerous and really, really uncertain, but it usually happened right in front of them. I know both of my ancestral mother and paternal lineages. It's actually pretty fascinating, but both of them were absolutely in the thick of in-your-face war. They had to run. Physically, they were refugees. I hear it from my family, but I also now recognize it that it's happening in the world. And yeah, it's not easy. But I've had to learn to differentiate the fact that, okay, what can I do to help? I help in however I can. But it's also not right in front of my face. Those are two very different neural pathways that occupy my brain. And so one of the key structures, again, we go back to the amygdala. It sits deep in the brain and it functions like an alarm system. So, as I said, operating on two different neural pathways. Is it right in front of me, or is it something far beyond my capacity to do anything about? And I'm not saying, again, don't care, but it's just being mindful so that my nervous system responds proactively and realistically. So I myself don't burn out. Because if I'm burning out, I'm of no use to any cause. I'm no use to anybody. I'm no use to my family. I'm no use to myself. I'm no use to my friends. It's about being cognizant of your psychological sovereignty. And that brings me to this topic of, okay, sovereignty and this dopamine economy that we live in. Let me break it down in a little different way. Dopamine isn't actually the pleasure chemical people often think it is. Surprise. Dopamine is the chemical of anticipation and pursuit. So it motivates curiosity, exploration, seeking. That's why they say when you do a task and you complete it, it's a dopamine hit because you finished it and you say, hey, I did it. And that's why we're talking about psychological sovereignty, because you need to economize your dopamine. If you're not able to complete anything, even if you're very curious about it and you do a deep dive on it and you know everything about it, if there's no action and sort of end goal, you didn't complete that cycle, your dopamine is going to drop, because dopamine is equating to curiosity and completing that sort of search. Digital platforms are built around something called a variable reward loop in dopamine. You never know what the next piece of information will be. Maybe it's interesting, maybe it's upsetting, maybe it will confirm something you already believe. That unpredictability keeps the dopamine engaged. But what is that? That's a recipe to burn out. Why? Because your dopamine cycle is never completing. Do you understand what I'm saying? When you keep scrolling, it's like, ooh, wait, what? And you have all this curiosity, you're seeking, you're exploring, but you're not really finishing the task. And so your dopamine is always, yeah, no, oh, no, it never really gets there. Do you know what that does to your brain? That unpredictability keeps that dopamine system engaged, but you don't really get the reward. So that variable reward loop keeps going and going and going, and you never quiet down. Do you see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? So your brain is constantly searching for the next reward signal because it's never getting it. What is that? That is taking advantage of your psychological sovereignty. They've hijacked it. And here's something else that's pretty surprising. Outrage. It doesn't upset the brain, believe it or not. It energizes it. Do you see? They know what they're doing, guys, with this variable reward loop. Outrage is posted and shown to you in the media and on however you want to see it, however it's digested into your system. Guess what? It doesn't upset the brain. It energizes it. So when information challenges your beliefs, the amygdala activates. But another region activates as well, and that's that medial frontal cortex. What is that, Steph, you asked? Well, that's the part of the brain which helps process identity and social belonging. So this region helps answer your questions like, who am I? What do I believe? What group do I belong to? And when information challenges those identities, the brain interprets it as social threat. So the outrage that we're seeing is not upsetting the brain. It's actually and ironically challenging your brain because it's a social threat. Outrage is that then sort of transmuted into an ancient reptilian part of your brain that comes to say, well, wait a minute, what about me? Am I unsafe? Isn't that funny? I know it's probably not what a lot of you want to hear. It's surprising, but it's true. Outrage and this awful, just abhorrent news coverage that you might hear on a daily basis is not upsetting your brain. It's tricking you into thinking that you yourself might be under social threat, which is why the conversations online often escalate so quickly, right? People are not just defending their ideas, they are defending their place in the tribe. So that can give you a little bit more of an idea of why people get so emotional online. And it gives you a little bit more access into why we're talking about psychological sovereignty. Because at the end of the day, you have to know what's going on. Not on its face, but what's going on in your psyche. And it's always going back to that ancient reptilian, is this going to keep me alive or not? And the brain prefers information that confirms what it already believes. We know this to be called confirmation bias. Why, again, does the brain do this? Well, because certainty is efficient. We're looking for what we already expect to hear. So when information fits our worldview, the brain relaxes. Because what? Doesn't mean you're necessarily right or wrong, but it means, oh, yes, this matches what I already think. That means that I probably won't die today. Really. And when information contradicts it, the brain experiences friction. So we naturally gravitate towards information that reinforces what we already think. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It means that it makes us feel, what's the word? Safe. Are we starting to untangle our minds and how oddly basic they are? That's why, in a lot of circles in psychology, they always say the brain is the smartest and dumbest part of our body because it has so much potential, but it also operates on a very, very, very basic level. Stay alive. So it becomes easy to live inside a curated reality, not because you chose it, but because the system optimized for engagement. So here's a simple practice you can use. And we could talk about this for eons, but we're going to break this down because I know this is a lot. It's a lot to absorb. You know why? Well, here, let's talk about confirmation bias before I go into a bit of discernment framework operation here. Because you guys don't want to hear what I'm saying. Because it makes it almost feel like we've oversimplified who we are, and that's not what we're doing at all. I'm breaking down the complexities of our world and complexities of how we take in information so you can actually understand that how it operates in your brain is actually very, very simple to contradict. It's doable to negate all of that because you have to just say, my system is so ancient, all of this is trying to keep me alive. And if I'm going to keep myself alive, I'm going to have to tone it down a notch. I'm going to have a little bit of discipline with how I walk and operate in the world, how I move in the world. I have to be a bit more disciplined, right? So before reacting, sharing or amplifying something, ask yourself 4 questions. Is it verified? Is it helpful? Is this reactive? And most importantly, is this feeding my identity or expanding my understanding? Is it truly helping me evolve? Or is this actually just reinforcing my reptilian behavior? Human beings have always had to adapt to new environments. The agriculture revolution changed how we lived. The industrial revolution changed how we worked. The digital revolution is now changing how we think. And how every revolution forces a new question. How do we remain human inside the systems we create? Because the real challenge of a modern world is not information, it is, what? Discernment. And we are learning how to survive in information environment now. We are on the precipice and in the thick of a whole new world. So where are you outsourcing your emotional state to an algorithm, guys? Understand the game and understand that your reptile brain only wants to stay alive. The nuance in between can really, really mess us up if we do not have discipline around discernment. And what would it look like to take that sovereignty back? And, as we wrap up today's episode, you may think these next 2 little mini hacks are overly simplified, and I guarantee you they are not. This is how simple it is to begin to take some of that control back, because I tell you, for us folks of a certain age, we need to be able to discern. We were not born into the information environment. We have to calibrate ourselves effectively into it. And one trick that Yoshie does, which I thought was brilliant and she shared with me today, and you might find this harder to do than you realize, but it is brilliant. Her phone never enters her bedroom. It stays in her office. Now, there are a few times where that is not, if her son is away and she is expecting him to call or her husband's out of town, okay, then she needs to loosen those reins a bit. But as a note and as a rule, the phone stays in a very, very specific room in the house. Period. That alone has done immense help for her nervous system and for her somatic way she moves in her body. And for me, my phone goes on airplane mode at a certain time in the evening. I have done a whole thing on digital detoxing because it really got bad. I became completely addicted to scrolling at night. I didn't feel right. My body was buzzing and it didn't feel good. So by 6:30, my phone goes on airplane mode. And then before I go to bed, I read something a little more lighthearted and maybe 3 or 4 pages. It doesn't have to be a lot. And in the morning before the phone goes on, and I wait at least an hour before the phone goes on in the morning, I read. Again, I activate different parts of my brain. And why? Because that relaxes the nervous system. I don't wake up and go on full alert. Oh God, what travesty happened today? And Yoshie and I have a bit different ways of doing it, but all for the same goal. Regulation, because I tell you one thing, guys, you are nothing, I am nothing, Yoshie is nothing without a regulated nervous system. You will not succeed without a regulated nervous system in any goal, even getting through the day. Those with anxiety, and hey, I'm raising my hand too. I have it more under control than I did 5 or 10 years ago. But that's because, why? I found I needed to have discipline around what was coming inside my brain. You will not succeed if you don't start discerning that. And we're going to continue one more episode next week. We're going to dive a little deeper. And then April, have we got some phenomenal guests lined up for you in April. So there is a lot to look forward to. And until then, I invite you to do one trick. Keep that phone under control and tell us how you feel, okay? So, on behalf of Yoshie and I, Stephanie, we thank you for listening to The Raw Onion, and we thank you for being here. We thank you for being you, and stay yourself, and stay curious, stay evolving in this information world. And until then, we are The Raw Onion. Like, subscribe, and follow for more. We thank you so much. Over and out. Be well.